It is keeping these NGOs, what they call it, the non-profit industrial complex or something like that. Yeah, the NGO complex now. Yeah, it is really disgusting. But you know what? This what would help? Shut off the program. You would have to turn off the dollars going to these NGOs. And you would have to really have some strict guidelines and reformations in the states, and open back up the insane asylums, because we had them and people don't like that name. So we will just say, for those who are mentally unfit to be in the population right now, they've got issues going on. And we need to reopen those institutions and not have people in there that are just going to abuse the patients, because that's a reason why some of them got closed in the first place. We need people there that are really going to care for the patients and start to really get the patients well, so then the patients can take care of the other individuals that are coming in, right? So you create this ecosystem, not of a community that would continue abuse and drugs and all those things. No, you want people to start doing better and give back and doing better. But, it's a long shot with everything what these people are doing. But hey, I just got to bring you the information. And now we're going to get into a video that I meant to play yesterday about Mr. Joe Kent, who left the administration. I played you the video yesterday where Alex Jones kind of read his resignation letter, but I wanted to show you this video where he talked to Tucker Carlson about Iran. Now, this is before the conflict that recently happened in February. So I just wanted you guys to see this.
Last question, because he called it 60 years ago. You referred to what a war with Iran would do to the United States. And I don't know that a lot of people in this country fully understand what Iran is as a nation state. It's not Afghanistan. What do you think the immediate and then longer term effects of a war with Iran would be on the United States?
Immediately, it would be very bloody. I have no doubt that we could probably defeat some of their air defense and go in there and have another shock and awe campaign. But again, like we saw how the shock and awe campaign in Iraq really didn't actually work in the long run. So I have no doubt that we'd have some immediate results that people would cheer about here in the United States. But Iran, Persia, has always been an empire. It's been around longer than any of the other players in the modern Middle East right now, and they are not going anywhere. And right now, Iran has a lot of internal problem. They have a lot of internal strife with the Ayatollah and that government that's only been in power since 1979. But again, if we start conducting strikes in Iran, everyone in Iran will rally around their leader and they will become even more revolutionary. And then we will have Iranian proxies throughout the entire region that will be conducting attacks just like we had in Jordan. And really in the long term, Tucker, the axis that has been built really since Putin invaded Russia and we decided that since Putin invaded Ukraine and we decided we were going to throw this massive sanctions package at them, China has come in as a major player and we are deeply compromised by China. They control a lot of our economy. They control global manufacturing. They're deeply embedded in Wall Street. And they've also made deals with the Iranians. They want access to Iranian petro, not to mention the fact that Biden killed off U.S. energy independence and now he's going after LNG. And the world's biggest LNG exporters are Iran, Russia, and Qatar. So this axis would become very powerful. If we get deeply involved and deeply entangled with Iran, we are playing right into China's hands, because China would like nothing more than for us to be committing our military industrial base to a war in Eastern Europe, in Ukraine, and then to be committing our conventional military power, our blood and our treasure back in the Middle East. That will make the Pacific, our actual border, extremely vulnerable to Chinese aggression, or China will simply just watch us bleed out economically as we bleed out on the battlefield on these couple different theaters. It's absolute insanity. It's opening up Pandora's box. And again, for what gain to the American people?
I mean, I think that's the most reasonable, common sense based, factual assessment I've seen of this from anyone.
Now, that was before the conflict. And in my opinion, I think, well, what are they talking about? They're talking about the Iran conflict and the effects of it. So the gentleman that was speaking, his name is Joe Kent. He is a Gold Star family member. His wife actually passed away, I think, in either Iraq or Afghanistan. He lost his wife in that conflict. They were both in the military. And so what he was talking about is the what ifs, because we weren't in Iran at that time. But if you listen to what he said in that video, a lot of these things have played out. Some have. And now we need to really look at, okay, what are we navigating being in Iran? What benefit is it to America to be there, to be in Ukraine and dealing with Russia, right? And seeing these things play out, because, President Trump was saying, he goes, I don't want to be in these endless wars and conflicts. And now we find ourselves here in Iran. Why? Right? I think a lot of American citizens are asking that question specifically. So let's get into our next video. And this is actually going to show some of the conflict that's happening. And I want to say this is Libya. This isn't in Iran. Oh, sorry, Beirut.
New video of an Israeli airstrike taking out a building in Beirut as the IDF takes aim at Hezbollah targets in Lebanon.
The terror group's main sponsor, Iran, is also in the crosshairs of U.S. and Israeli strikes. CENTCOM giving an update moments ago on Operation Epic Fury. Pilots have carried out more than 8,000 flights now, taking out nearly 7,800 enemy targets. That's the update at this hour, 1 o'clock Eastern time. Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Sandra Smith in New York on a very busy afternoon. John?
Very busy Wednesday afternoon. I'm John Roberts in Washington. This is America Reports. Israel's military says it has killed Iran's intelligence minister in an airstrike, making it the third senior Iranian leader to be eliminated so far this week.
So, John, right now, President Trump is on the way, as you just saw moments ago, to Dover Air Force Base in Delaware to attend the dignified transfer of 6 American service members who were killed in the crash of a refueling aircraft over Iraq.
Our chief foreign affairs correspondent, 𝗧𝗓 live in Tel Aviv for us. Trey?
John, good afternoon. I want to start with a statement crossing the wires just last hour from Iran's Supreme Leader Mojtaba Khamenei, saying that criminals have to pay soon for his blood. And he is reportedly talking about the top official Ali Larijani, who was killed yesterday. We should note we've not yet seen any proof of life from the new supreme leader in Iran, and this statement is coming through Reuters via state media in Iran. It comes as we're tracking developments out of the Islamic Republic, where overnight the Israelis launched a precision strike to kill 𝗬𝗓𝗄𝗏, Iran's intelligence minister, a man who was responsible in part for taking down the internet in Iran. You can see some file video of him here. He was also responsible for coordinating the sleeper cells of the Iranian regime around the world. He is the third top Iranian official in just 24 hours to be taken out, alongside the besieged commander Soleimani and Ali Larijani. These three were responsible in different ways for the crackdown on protesters earlier this year, and it does appear this is part of a shaping operation to lay the groundwork for Iranian civilians if they decide to take to the streets of their country once again. We're also tracking U.S. strikes, where U.S. Central Command says for the first time in this conflict they used multiple 5,000-pound deep penetrator bombs on hardened Iranian missile sites near the Strait of Hormuz. This map shows where those strikes took place, and again, they were going after the anti-ship missiles belonging to the Iranian regime that threaten that critical waterway. As these strikes are taking place, U.S. Central Command launching a variety of strikes alongside their Israeli counterparts, going after ballistic missile launching positions, command and control centers, and other locations that the Iranian regime thought they were able to hide from those American and Israeli planes. The Israelis also releasing some new video of their own, showing a wave of strikes against critical Iranian infrastructure, as reports indicate that gas facilities were also targeted in the south of Iran today. This video shows the besieged forces that had set up checkpoints in the Iranian capital of Tehran. They are being, quote, hunted by the Israelis, again, trying to lay the groundwork if civilians there want to go to the streets. Now, John, tonight, the Israeli people are bracing for more incoming Iranian ballistic missile fire. The regime continues to launch cluster munitions at this country, overnight killing at least 2 people. John?
Trey Yingst in Tel Aviv kicking us out this afternoon with the latest details. Trey, thank you. Now this.
Be sure to like and subscribe.
I'm just praying for those people in Iran, because it's just, war is never good, but with everything else going on, there's a saying, it says, when all else fails, go to war. You know, people have been talking about the economy's not right, and this and that and the other, and here we are. Right? We're in a conflict. We are not in a war. Now, Israel, they can say if they're in a war with Iran, that's not our war here in the United States, because we have, you know, kind of checks and balances on our side. I don't like that we're a part of this conflict, but what I am grateful for is Promethean and explaining a lot of what's going on behind the scenes and giving a different perspective, right, of what is happening there in Iran. So I wanted to play this first video, and this talks about Trump and Russia and how they point to the same enemy.
Focused on Iran this week, President Trump made clear that he is operating on a grander theater of war. Here's what the president said. I'm surprised that Zelensky doesn't want to make a deal. Tell Zelensky to make a deal because Putin's willing to make a deal. Zelensky is far more difficult to deal with. The president just told you who is blocking the peace. And this week, Russia's foreign ministry took it a step higher and laid the blame directly on the British. 2 great powers pointing in the same direction. That is not a coincidence. That is the sound of the British imperial chessboard being flipped over. So today I'm going to take you out of the fog of the immediate war and all the propaganda around Iran and show you how the strategic map of the entire world is being redrawn in real time by sovereign nations acting in their own interests for the first time in 80 years. Now, the establishment media wants you totally focused on Iran, whether it's the CNN narrative that Trump doesn't have a plan and we're in for chaos, or the Fox narrative that he's out for regime change, or that this is a masterstroke against Russia and China. They want you trapped in their narrative. What they don't want you to see is the big picture. They're reporting from inside the old paradigm. But if you zoom out, you'll see something entirely different. This week, the outlines of a new world order, a real one, not Mark Carney's, began to emerge. Great powers acting in their own sovereign interests, converging against the forces of permanent manufactured conflict. I'm Susan Kokinda. I've tracked the imperial great game for decades, not the puppet show and the headlines, but the real architecture of power. The empire doesn't fight its own wars. It manages them. It needs great powers in permanent conflict because that's what keeps it in control. What we are now seeing is that architecture beginning to fail on every front simultaneously. So if you want to understand how that is unfolding, please hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons so we can stay in touch and we can reach more people. Here's what I'm going to cover today. First, Trump's identification of Zelensky as the obstacle to peace, with a side note on Israel. Second, Russia's identification of Britain as the obstacle to peace. And third, what Russia and China didn't do in the UN Security Council and what it means. So let's start with what the president actually told us this week. Because in the same 7 days, Donald Trump drew a line on the record in his own words, separating American objectives from the agendas of 2 of the empire's most important instruments. And most people missed it because they were watching 2 different stories instead of 1. So on Ukraine, you already heard what he told NBC. Putin is willing to make a deal. Zelensky is the obstacle. But there's a second quote from that same interview that is just as important. When Zelensky offered to help the United States intercept Iranian drones, Trump's response was immediate. Zelensky is the last person we need help from. Let that land. The man whose war the entire transatlantic establishment has demanded America fund, arm, and defend at any cost Trump just told you he's the last person whose help he wants. Now turn to Iran. In the same week at Joint Base Andrews, a reporter asked the president directly whether American objectives in Iran are the same as Israel's. And here's what the president said.
Are you speaking with Prime Minister Netanyahu? And are your objectives the same in terms of ending the war?
They might be a little different, I guess. You know, they're a different country than we are.
Then Defense Secretary Hegseth said the same thing. When asked about Israel striking Iranian oil facilities, which was not a stated American objective, Hegseth said,
well, I would just state by saying Israel's been a really strong partner in this effort. Where they have different objectives, they've pursued them. Ultimately, we've stayed focused on ours.
So on two different fronts, Ukraine and Iran, the U.S. is pursuing its own objectives. On Ukraine, Trump is saying that Putin is the reasonable party and Zelensky is the obstacle. On Iran, Trump is telling Netanyahu, whose war aims include permanent regime change and an indefinite timeline, that America has different objectives. And President Trump has already acted on that difference, sending Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner to Israel after they bombed an oil refinery to tell Israel to stop hitting domestic economic targets. The U.S. wants a stable Iran with a functioning economy when the fighting is over. These are not mixed messages. This is a president refusing on both fronts to be managed by the empire's pawns. And Russia just gave the empire a name. But before I get to that, if you're finding this kind of analysis, that is the real architecture behind the headlines, useful, then you need to be subscribed to Promethean Action's free newsletter. We've been tracking the imperial great game for decades, and right now, that work has never mattered more. So use the link in the description to sign up for our newsletter. So while President Trump was identifying Zelensky as the obstacle to peace, the Russian Foreign Ministry took it a step higher. On March 10th, British Storm Shadow missiles struck a civilian district of Bryansk in Russia. 7 people killed, dozens were wounded. Russia's foreign ministry did not issue a generic condemnation of Western aggression. They named the British directly. They said, "It is evident that Britain has become deeply entangled in geopolitical games, seeking to strengthen its status as the informal leader of European hawks on the Ukrainian track and as Russia's irreconcilable adversary." And then they accused Britain of sabotaging the American-led peace process. We have also noted that British weapons were used at a time when political and diplomatic efforts to settle the Ukrainian crisis in the trilateral Russia-US-Ukraine format are intensifying. The obvious goal of London and other Western capitals is to stage a large-scale provocation involving civilian casualties in order to derail the peace process and escalate hostilities. Russia is naming